Hey everyone, it's Adrian, and that's Kirby on the other side of the world. So
Hello.
Kirby. And this is the first episode of, I'm going to call it the Genie Podcast. We might come up with a more interesting name later on. And for our first podcast, we're going to talk about body image, but I think we delved down a bit more specifically and wanted to talk about why so many women in particular, being the Genie Magazine, and people who are watching this probably know who I am, why so many women, in particular young women, hate their body, for want of a better word. And I guess, Kirby, you're the one that wanted to really tackle this. I mean, I did as well, but you suggested it as a topic for our first podcast. So obviously, it's something that you've been giving a lot of thought to. Why is it an issue for you?
It's an issue for me because I am a tennis coach and I'm someone who's very concerned and health conscious. I specifically have coached so many young women and little girls, and I feel like we can do better. And
do a lot better.
And especially growing up as an athlete and knowing the pressures that I struggled through, I think that this is a huge jumping off point that we could talk forever about, because it's just so loaded and it's passionate and everybody has their story. Everybody knows someone who has struggled with it, if you haven't struggled with it yourself. So I think it's something that everybody can feel and relate to. So that's why body image is so important to me.
Sure. I feel I should lead off because obviously if people watching this, they probably know who I am. They may not know who you are. So when did I interview you? It was about 4 months, time flies. It's about 4 or 5 months ago. And you were very open and authentic in that interview, kind of startlingly so. And you opened up about anxiety and depression. And I know that you've vlogged since then about that. So I think it's interesting because it does lead into eating disorders. It's usually, at least from my experience, having worked with a lot of young girls as well, it's not simply a physical thing very often of wanting to look skinny. It's very often more complicated than that. And I do believe it's a mental health issue as much as it is the simple fact of, not eating or things like that. So from your experience, I guess, working with those young girls, have you found, I guess, a similar experience that it's as much it's up here as much as simply wanting to look skinny?
Yes, I think it is so mental because it's so deeply ingrained into our self-conscious through all of the images that we see every single day, whether it's on Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, your TV. A lot's being done currently to overhaul that, but it's still a conversation that needs to be had. So I just seen, in my experience, I guess I'll be open. I know the girls and women who I've worked with probably wouldn't mind. But yeah, it strikes such a chord with me knowing women who have been so deep down into an eating disorder to know that this is such a large problem.
I had this horrible experience with I don't know if you had the same one, but most of the girls that I know who struggle with it are actually very intelligent, extremely so, like very high achievers. I'd say almost very stressed, very organized. And I had one particular year 10, year 11 girl who had to be actually institutionalized because I don't know how they do it in America, but here they forced the girls. It was horrible. She was anorexic, and they forced them to weigh themselves. And if they didn't reach a certain target, they would be taken back and basically into where insane people are taken. And it was horrible. They'd have to strip search the girl because the girls would hide. I think I might have told you this, weight sort of in their underwear. And it was a horribly demeaning experience. And she was dragged out kicking and screaming in the middle of the night and, stuck in a van, taken away. And her rehabilitation process was a very, very long time. But she was, to give you an idea, basically vice captain of the school. And she would have scored in year 12 in our final exams easily within the top 1%. And I know that's a very particular kind of intelligence, but still, she was super organized, super sporty, super intelligent, very easy to coach, very obedient. And yet her disorder didn't just affect her, it affected her entire family, and her family, I think both were doctors. So it really is an issue that I think tears families apart from the inside out. And I also think that sometimes people don't get the attention they deserve because they think it's self-inflicted, right? They think it's just, oh, you will just eat and it'll be that easy. But I don't feel it's that easy at all, because it's a much more complicated issue than that.
Well, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that she was this, elite human being, just so intelligent and athletic and all of these things that we would think that she was so high up there and had everything together. But that's part of it, is that there are certain things that your expectations that you feel you have to hit. And for an athlete, in tennis, for sure, I felt it growing up. And so many other sports also, it feels like you have a requirement to be both strong for your sport and skinny for the look of it. Now,
do you think that pressure comes more from within or more from without, or is it both? Because you'd think in a sport, hopefully, that the focus would be completely on performance, right? I mean, if you're winning all your matches, that's it, or whatever it is. I know it's not always that, but the pressure that you felt, was it more outside, inside, or 50-50?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
Because even though maybe people aren't saying it directly to you, hinting. It's just a message of keeping up with the Joneses, of having that specific look and feeling a need to keep up. And part of that is that if you look at the women on TV, or you see the girls competing around you, and it makes you think that if I'm not shaped like that, if I'm not of that build, what have you, then, and I don't look like that, then I'm not going to be as successful also. Yeah. So mentally, it really eats away at you.
Let's work out exactly, because there's a lot of people who are insecure, and I find it's almost part of the human condition. You're always going to look at yourself and compare, and some of that you just can't escape. But how would you say that you would know when it goes beyond that sort of healthy level of slight insecurity to something that's more chronic and something that's more deep and ingrained and really needs to be dealt with? Like how would you basically know when you really need to tackle it and get to work about it?
Well, I would like to answer that question in two different ways. One, from the perspective of the person, how you can self-check and know that it's time to change and that there's a problem. And the other would be how you, on the outside looking in, could start observing someone you know.
Sure.
And know that now's the time, based off of these signals, that I need to step in and say something. Yeah. But from within, it's significant weight loss or weight gain. It's a lack of self-confidence. It's feeling, it sounds so weird, but I mean, I know this feeling, and I know so many women feel this feeling, but it's a guilt in everything that you eat.
I know that feeling.
And you shouldn't have that. But I think you go for so long with that feeling that you just think it's normal. So some of these things, I mean, and what do you think? What are some indicators to you in your own head that you're having a problem and you need to check it?
I think very similarly to you. I think it's a matter of degree and how much it pervades your life. For example, self-confidence is something that I think a lot of people are going to deal with ongoing. I don't think it's a question of you get confident once in your life and then you're going to be confident for the rest of your life. I also feel that when you're lacking in self-confidence in one area, it's going to appear in a lot of other areas as well. Beyond that, I do think it's a gray area. I don't think you hit a point. I mean, you might have a certain event, like let's say a physical health event in your life where it goes, okay, so there definitely is a problem. At which point you really need to do something because it's so serious, and obviously everyone around you will probably know. But I think that's one thing. I think it's more dangerous if it's a bit more sort of subtle, because you might start by going, okay, I'm not like classic ones. I'm going to cut out carbs. Right? Or I'm going to cut out fat. Yeah, that's the one. And then it starts like that. And then you go, I then need to cut.
Vegan or...
Exactly.
Right.
And a lot of them come from good places. In fact, that I would almost say motive matters, because if you are looking to eat to be healthy and you're looking to be healthy and you're measuring like performance goals, which is something I always tell everyone, not just girls, but measure, am I getting stronger? Am I getting faster? How is my health? When I'm waking up, how do I feel? If your goal is to be better in all those areas and it's happening, you're fine. If you are feeling, and a lot of girls, again, they were getting faster, ironically they were getting stronger, but their body was breaking down, they had no energy. It's kind of, I would almost measure it based on performance, but I think you need to check in with yourself and just have an honest conversation. And I think the problem is self-awareness is very often lacking. Right? It's so easy to point to a person and go, I know exactly what your problem is.
Yes.
And like they're going back at you.
But I don't know what my problem is.
Like, I know what your problem is. And I feel like you need to really have an honest look at yourself. And it's almost impossible. And if you're not that good with it, and even if you are, I would check in with a friend who knows you really well. And it has to be a friend that will hold you accountable as well. Because you and I both know lots of friends who will tell you exactly what you want to hear, but in a situation like this, it ain't helpful. You need someone who's going to listen to you and go, okay, I hear you, and I think given what you've said, this is my honest opinion. I'm not saying it to hurt you, but, I care for you. And this is what you said you're going to answer it two ways, looking from the outside in. I think if you really are a friend and you're seeing someone, and you'll get subtle hints, right? You'll see that they stop eating or they started behaving a different way, or you'll see, drastic weight loss. And I think it's your duty as a friend, if you really care, to actually not say, hey, you've got an eating disorder, but, hey, how are you doing? I just noticed this. I mean, would you feel the same way? I mean, if you noticed a friend who was struggling with that, I mean, surely you'd say something, right?
I value honesty more than just about any other quality in a friend. And that to me means someone that maybe sometimes the truth hurts, but when you do struggle with self-awareness, and it's tough sometimes to be honest with yourself, then those best friends are critical to keeping you in check, and nicely, in a healthy, positive way, that that you're going, I'm your friend and I care about you, so I want to let you know that you're going, this is what I observe from the outside looking in. I think sometimes that's when it hits you the hardest, when other people call you out on things that are going on. It means that you didn't usually realize how bad it actually was until they say something. And I think it's so important as a first step to be brave enough, because if you can't stand up to your friends, if you can't stand up to your friends, then what are you going to fall for, and who can you stand up to? And so I think it's not standing up as much as leaning in to help. And it's such an important piece of the puzzle. But going back to our original question of why do women in particular hate their bodies? Well, I mean, as a little girl, I remember the messages that you're told are to be pretty, and you want people to compliment you on how you look, and it becomes part of your self-worth, or it doesn't. And you feel like, okay, maybe I either fall into that category or not. And we would be so much better served to teach our little girls and compliment boys and girls in the same way, which is reminding them that you're intelligent and you're funny, and I love how you figured this out and how athletic you are. And I relate to that because kind of like diving in internally for me, there, like a therapy session. I'm a tennis pro and I'm an on-camera personality. And never in my life have I thought of myself as attractive or athletic. I have never thought that I'm an athlete. And I know that I'm not alone by saying that.
No.
And yet the thing, it goes, being athletic and being a tennis pro, you would think it just goes hand to hand. Yeah. So when I get those kind of compliments, it actually makes me shudder, because I don't think of that as part of my self-worth. And so it's, so it's like difficult to hear that kind of compliment. Yeah. But then again, you have to like be able to say thank you and not just, oh, no, I'm not. But, it just goes to show you that I'm somebody who speaks about body image and helping each other out and empowering women all the time. And yet, I'm the farthest thing from perfect. And I have these fears, and I, have these these things in my head that I think are so messed up, but it's not messed up because we're all like this.
We're all crazy. I think you're being a little hard on yourself with what you just said about yourself, but I want to chime in and interject. I mean, what you said is so on the money. The thing is, I want to be able to give people as much help as possible. So for you, for example, you're saying that the self-worth is a huge thing, and I get that. Like if you're given a compliment and it's a bit out of your comfort zone, particularly in a physical area, it can very often make you go, well, what the hell's going on here? Somebody wants something from you, right? Like, why are you saying that?
Throw up the walls.
Yeah, but what has worked for you? I completely acknowledge you saying you're not perfect, and I respect that. What has worked for you in terms of maybe advancing the self-love or self-worth even one step? Because I feel we're talking about why women hate their bodies. Dealing with it physically, sometimes it's not possible. Like if you're a certain body shape, you cannot look like, I'm 6'2" or whatever, and I weigh about 150 pounds on a good day. Like I can stand sideways and miss all the rain. Growing up, wanted to look like, because again, cultural conditioning. Like I still remember, it was like Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. And that guy, like for me to want to look like him in the first place is messed up. And I'm the first person to say, aim for the stars, and if you miss, you'll still land on the moon. But there are certain body types, and no matter how much you want to bang your head against the brick wall, I'm not going to look like him, because genetically, and like as a tennis player, that body type wouldn't work because I'd be buggered within one rally, right? But what has worked for you in terms of just, going, all right, I know there's a problem here. What's 1, 2, or just 3 tiny things I can do consistently that might help me love myself a little bit more?
A few things. So first of all, my own journey of self-love is ongoing. And I think it always will be, because your body's always changing, your mind's always changing. And with that said, it's a work in progress that I actually dedicate time to. And part of that has been, for my journey in particular, eliminating negativity from my life, eliminating unhealthy relationships that don't serve my self-worth or that detract from my self-worth. That's been a big part of my life. Unfortunately, I have had relationships, friendships, and relationships
yeah.
that where I just associated with people who weren't good to me. And as I've gotten older, I realized that if I'm on a certain path and I have my goals that I want to accomplish, that being surrounded by that kind of person detracts so much from my goals and my passion. And so it's simple. It's so hard, but it's so simple.
Yeah.
To just cut out the BS and tell yourself and make it part of your mantra. I don't have time for drama. I don't have time for negativity. I don't let that in. So I literally, in my life, I do not accept that. I don't let it in. Another thing is realizing that it's not selfish to love yourself. It's okay to love yourself more than anybody else.
Yeah.
I think that especially as women too, we're taught to take care of every other thing above ourselves. And then whenever, we get the scraps of whatever time is left.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're inherent nurturers, and yet so many of us don't take the time to nurture ourselves. So I think with that, a lot of it is listening to your body.
Yeah.
And I currently, it's kind of a recent thing for me as far as like going back to eating.
Yeah.
But I don't feel guilty anymore about what I eat because it's incredibly liberating because I listen to my body, and now I've processed out what makes me feel good and what doesn't make me feel good. And what doesn't make me feel good, unfortunately, is filling my body with unprocessed foods that weigh me down and kind of clutter my mind. And, and then the next day I'm always like, oh, I can't believe I ate that. And, and you wake up in the morning like a little stunted because you feel like you have to make up for it, and it's so much easier to find a healthy path and just try to not be perfect. Nobody's perfect. I mean, exactly. I know for sure I could never go the rest of my life without just chowing down on a whole pint of ice cream in one sitting. But it's just not in my cards. Like that's going to happen for me many times. Yeah. But it's not about being perfect. It's about being directionally correct.
Yeah. I think the self-awareness comes back into it as well. I think if you really know where you're going and you're being honest with what you've done and what you're taking in, I think letting yourself go is liberating, and it's very important because I think it should be about enjoying yourself, no matter what anyone else says. Not feeling guilty, because I mean there's nothing worse if you're going to eat something unhealthy and then feel guilty about it. Why would you do that? I mean, eat something unhealthy, you feel great about it, and then just know that 80% of the time or whatever it is, you're actually doing something that's right for you, right? I just wanted to pick up, you said cutting out unhealthy relationships, and I know that you've also cut out quite a lot of social media in terms of how much you're willing to be on it. Those two have to be pretty related, right? When we're talking about why do women hate their bodies, and you look at the media and you go, well, that's the reason. How important to you is it, the whole idea of limiting social media? Well,
put it this way, in perspective, my job is on social media, and I have to find a balance and sometimes pull back from social media for months at a time. That's how much.
Which is huge when you work in it.
Yes, that's how much it affects me. But the thing is that people online think that they're immune, and it brings out their their ugliest selves because they can sit behind a computer screen and be anonymous and say anything that they want to. It's crazy. On the flip side of it, social media can help us be more honest and authentic, more so than we ever have been.
Yeah.
But it also has this nasty, nasty side of it. So social media is not, it's not for achieving. And what magazine covers and what social media will tell you is that bodies are for achieving. But what you have to figure out is that everything's going to change, and everything about you is perfect the way it is. Your body's going to change, your mind's going to change, and perfection is just maddening, and it's not worth it. So despite what they tell you that bodies are for achieving, instead, your body's here to help take you as far as your dreams will let you. And that is my perspective on how we should be viewing our bodies. It should be tailored to what you're trying to get out of this life.
I completely agree, because especially like on Instagram and Snapchats, those sort of visual mediums, it's all, again, about the hustle, wake up and you have to do this at 5 a.m. and pushing harder than everyone else. And I bought into that a while back, and it's like, okay, I'm going to do that. And if it's not hurting, basically you ain't doing it right, or you're not doing it enough. I found that quite a lot with the CrossFit mentality. I love certain parts of it, don't get me wrong, but this whole, if you're not puking, you're not doing it right. And then I realized, hang on, you guys can do that because then you go and sit on your butt in an office. I get out of this and I'm running around on a tennis court. At some level, this is really not fair, because if you break, it's fine. If I break, that's my livelihood.
Yes.
So I completely agree with your message and going, you got to tailor it to what you want. And I think a lot of people don't know that, which is why I think they buy into the whole social media and going, oh, well, that's apparently what I'm supposed to look like, so I'm going to go for that, even if it's completely incompatible with your body type and completely incompatible with your lifestyle. I do want to just touch on the social media aspect, and it's like online bullying, right? And there are a lot of campaigns about reducing bullying, which is great, don't get me wrong. I do believe at some level there's always going to be bullying. There's always going to be violence, and there's always going to be people trying to market in a way that makes you feel shit about your body. So on the flip side, there is that bringing that level down, but also really building up your own resilience to it. So not going, it's going to go away and then I'll feel happy, but understanding, okay, it might come down, but there's always going to be some level of marketing message that you're not good enough, you're not skinny enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not white enough, you're not blonde enough, whatever it is. So I have to build up my own resilience to it. And you did mention this about self-love and cutting out negative relationships. But in terms of being resilient, is there anything that you found really helps with when the negativity comes in, just kicking it or nipping it in the bud before it sort of kicks into overdrive and starts, ruining a day, ruining a week, ruining a month, or whatever it is?
I think it depends on your process.
Yeah.
So I know I'm figuring it out for me. It's being good to myself. It's not going home and having that pint of ice cream. But another person, that could be what makes them feel better.
Yeah.
Sticking it in the bud and saying, you know what, I'm fabulous, and I'm gonna have as much ice cream as I possibly want. I'm gonna eat the whole gallon because I love me, and nobody can take that away from me, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I just know for me that it's getting enough sleep, it's eating well and taking care of myself that way. It's exercising, or else I feel a little nutty.
Yeah.
And reminding myself, kind of like dipping into the healthy, positive relationships that you have. I mean, I am truly, truly blessed, but it's not an accident that I have surrounded myself with some badass women and some badass friends like yourself who know the struggle and support each other in times of good and bad.
Yeah, and that, as you say, it's not an accident, right? Because if you don't cut out the negative ones, then there's no vacuum for the positive ones to come in. And I don't think anyone accidentally surrounds themselves with really, really outstanding friends. I think it's a conscious choice that you need to make. I will just share briefly with you. I interviewed someone yesterday. She's a singer in Boston, and she sings, and she was on American Idol, and she's she's performed in front of 30,000. I think it's what you guys call middle school girls and guys. She sings her song and talks about anti-bullying, and she hashtags all of her Instagram with highlight reel. And the reason she says that is because if you look at Instagram, it's always a highlight reel.
Yeah.
And she says one of the easiest ways for you to feel like shit is to take your average and compare it to someone else's highlight reel, which is what we all do, right? And I just thought that was such a neat way of putting it, because you and you know when you wake up what you look like, and then you go on Instagram and go, oh my God, this person looks like this all the time. And
hashtag I woke up like this.
Yeah. No, I saw one of those, like, oh, it made me cringe. And it's like, after that, it's like, hashtag no, really. I'm like, oh, I want to kill somebody. But just understanding that Instagram and Snapchat, it's very much a highlight reel. So it's not real. It's definitely, it's not real. It's manufactured, it's fake, however you want to call it. And she also had this really interesting point where she goes, I'm not going to put on makeup for anyone, but I'm also not going to take it off for anyone. So not having that guilt where you go, okay, I'm going to love my body regardless, which means I have to almost flip my switch and go completely the other way, where I don't do any makeup, I don't exercise, I eat whatever the hell I want because nobody's going to tell me what to do. So I found her message really, really impactful. As I said, she's been in front of about 30,000 people in the Boston area, and she wants to go national, and then international with that message. But I thought you'd like that message, just that highlight reel.
I love that. That is so great. I think a good way to close the podcast today, I don't ever like to leave things open-ended. So it's all well and good that we've talked about body image today and self-love and social media and all of these great topics. But we need to talk about an action plan for how we change this conversation.
Yeah. Well,
so what are your thoughts on that?
Okay. I think I've mentioned and alluded to this before. I think waiting for media to be kind to us is a mug's game. That's just not going to happen. If it happens, great. But you can't lay the blame on anyone else or anything else. And I think that's a really hard lesson that people learn. It's like if you want to change your life in any area, not just necessarily your body image, but I think you have to start with going, okay, I'm completely responsible for what's going on inside my own head. And if you if you want to give permission for people to live inside your head rent-free, then that's your decision. But I don't think you can ever win the game when you're always you're checking your social media, you're letting it affect your life, and you're waiting for them to change rather than making a conscious decision yourself to go, no. And similarly to what you said, this is what I stand for, and this is what I won't accept anymore. This is what I stand for, this is what I don't stand for, and then systematically cutting out the things in your life that don't serve you. I think that awareness and that sort of discipline would be the first place to start. I mean, would you agree, disagree? I'm saying it's got to start with yourself and taking responsibility.
Yes, I would agree. Earlier in the podcast, we talked about standing up to your friends, but you also have to be able to stand up to yourself.
Exactly.
And figure out what works for you and how you can love yourself above everything else. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have your body, then there's nothing. There's
nothing else. You don't get a second one.
Else. So it's to reiterate, it's not selfish to love yourself above everything else.
And I think it's an ongoing process in terms of where your body goes. And, putting yourself first, the analogy I like is, in airplanes, whenever they say the oxygen mask is going to fall down and you've got a child next to you, they never say the oxygen mask is going to fall down and you put it on your kid first. It's always put it on yourself first and then put it on your child. Because if you can't help yourself, then you can't help anybody else. And there does seem to be this correlation to me between people who are suffering from hating their own bodies, and very often they're the kindest people in the world, and they're just being so hard on themselves. And I don't buy that that's just a coincidence. I think very often the people who are kindest to other people are doing that because they know how hard they've been on themselves, and they know how shit it makes them feel, and they don't want anyone else to go through that. So in terms of not leaving it open-ended, I would say you got to start by just realizing you've got to take responsibility for it, and it's an ongoing process. And then really, I think beyond that, it's looking at what you eat and make it obviously healthy but sustainable. I can't tell you how many people go off the deep end and cut everything out. I'm just going to drink water and eat organic kale, and that's it. Nothing else. Because yes, it's attainable, but it's not sustainable. And the same attitude, please, with exercise. Don't go and kill yourself, especially if you've never exercised before. I know so many friends who then like go into a CrossFit sort of workout, and within 1 week they're completely broken and they can't work out for a month. And then by the end of that month, they're worse than, like, they've gone backwards steps. So that would be my action plan. How does that work for you? Would you tailor it? Would you adjust it? How does that work for you?
That works for me. To me, it's all about, it's 4 words: listen to your body. And that's not listening to anybody else. It's listen to your body. It's not listening to your mind. Listen to your body. If your body is telling you that you need to slow down, you're tired, and you need more sleep.
I know what that's like.
Then it's not as important. The 5 o'clock workout is less important compared to getting enough sleep and just taking care of yourself and knowing that you actually are perfect exactly the way you are.
Yeah.
And it's having this self-awareness and keep telling yourself this every single day, and it gets better. And on top of that, once you build from that foundation, then you start recognizing the messages that are coming out from other places, social media.
Which are counter to that, yeah.
And you start recognizing when you see something on your phone that's not okay. That's not real life, and so I'm not going to validate it.
Yeah.
That's okay too.
I completely agree. I just want you to quickly give a shout out to the Instagram photo you just did the other day, because I think that's a lot to do with body image, right? So I've just got it here. It's Give Me Mora. Love your body, Mora. So tell us quickly about that. Let's go.
Okay. So my good friend Nic Mora over at GiveMeMora.com is doing a Love Your Body campaign. The hashtag is Love Your Body Mora.
M-O-R-A.
Mora is spelled M-O-O-R-A. And it's inspired by People Magazine. And you can jump on my Instagram at Kirby Bridges to check out my own post, or Nic's Instagram at Nic Mora XO. And in all of her blog posts recently, she is featuring people in the entertainment industry who are talking about standing up to the negative body images in the industry. And with that said, we're taking pictures, hashtag no filter, and sharing our sizes and the foods we can't live without, and what makes people sexiest, and how you navigate this body image heavy industry, and the advice that we have to share. So I gave a lot of advice today, but at GiveMeMora.com you can get even more advice from really positive women who are making a difference. So I'm very proud to be part of that.
Fantastic. I would strongly encourage anyone who even thinks they might be dealing with, hating their body, to check that out, because just surrounding yourself, as you've mentioned multiple times, with positivity goes a long, long way, and just changing that conversation inside your own head, from one of like self-hate to step by step being a bit more accepting and loving your body more. I think that's a great message. So I'll hook all that up in the edit. And Yeah.
Adrian, I think you should do it.
Isn't it I'm in for anything, but I'm only
Men too. All you have to do is snap a picture with your size and fill out the questionnaire.
my size. Well, I don't think men's sizes work exactly the same. I might contact Nic and ask her if she like what she wants from me, but I'm happy. I'm game for anything.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'll be looking forward to that.
All right. Well, thanks guys so much for tuning into the first episode, and thank you to Kirby as well.
Thank you.
And we will speak to you next time. Bye bye.
Bye.